Hello, and welcome to our Let's Plot for Ursula. Ursula's objective is to have both the crown and the trident at Ursula's lair at the start of her turn. Both the crown and the trident cost 4 power to play, so you're going to need at least 8 power. However, you're also going to need at least some way to move King Trident and attach a binding contract to him. The binding contracts cost 3 power to attach to King Trident because of his ability, and a whirlpool would cost an extra one, or a poor unfortunate souls would cost an extra one as well, but it also is one more than whirlpool. Basically, you're going to need a lot of power for Ursula. Ursula is not a very fast villain, as you can tell from these costs that she's going to have to incur. To make up for this, she is one of the heaviest faders in the game. Yes, her top fate location is blocked, but 3 copies of Grow Giant and Trickery can all be used to fate your opponent. Trickery isn't quite a fate action, but it's pretty close. The first thing you should focus on with Ursula is to get that power, and to find those items. For Ursula, discarding is super important. Basically, everything that's not the crown, the trident, uh, or this green binding contract, which we will get into in a little bit, can be discarded without really anything of value being lost. When you do eventually find the crown and trident and green binding contract, it's not always the best idea to keep them all on the board, because Ariel can come out, and now you'll have to defeat both King Trident and Ariel. Before you start playing your items, it's a good idea to have the crown, trident, and binding contract in your hand. Of course, this can vary game by game, and it may be worth it to play the trident out early so you can attach the binding contract to King Trident. However, be aware that Sebastian can come and save him from his inevitable fate, but only through delaying. But it's still a massive time loss for Ursula, since there's no way to get it off of him without uh, defeating him. It's not a vanquish. She does not have any vanquish actions. She just defeats. So let's talk about how she defeats heroes. She needs to attach a binding contract, one of these 2-cost items, to a hero. Let's take this blue one. The blue one says that this hero is defeated when they are moved to Eric's ship. So once Ariel is moved to Eric's ship, she will be defeated. Now, the thing about Ursula is that you really should not be defeating any heroes other than King Triton. You should just let them stay on the board. It is really best not to interact with her gimmick. Every hero, Eric, Flounder, Grimsby, Max, Scuttle, and Sebastian, have an on-play, and Ariel as well, but we'll talk about her a little bit. They all have an on-play ability. So, if they are only played once, you only have to deal with those abilities once. So instead, it's best to just keep them at one location. This location is up to you, but I like Eric's ship, both because I think it is her worst location, and Poor Unfortunate Souls is a 2-cost card that can move each hero to an adjacent location. That means if your realm is totally covered, you can just say, actually, only one location is, and only Eric can move heroes out of the way. Whirlpools are also beneficial in this regard since they are super cheap. It only costs 1 power, and there are 3 of them, so you aren't really in danger of running out for a while. However, what I want to talk about for the moving heroes are the eels. They do require an activate action, and you only have one activate action. But once you pay their initial 2 cost, they are free to do. I like to have an eel at both Eric's ship and the shore. Since if this is covered, this one, this location has no way for you to activate the eels, and at this location, your activate would be covered. So you would need a whirlpool to move the hero, but at that point, uh, you should really be using Poor Unfortunate Souls. And she does have opportunities to get these card effects back, but she cannot get back the eels. Uh, in a game where it is important for you to go fast, you only need one eel to defeat King Triton. But in a game that has a little bit of slower pace and you need to fate some more, playing both eels would be a good idea. So let's talk about that gimmick of her changing lock token. I personally don't find that to be all that important. To change her lock token, she has 3 copies of Change Form, and Grimsby will allow your opponent to choose which way they like it. She starts the game with the Palace locked, and she will need to have both items. At some point on her turn, the layer will need to be unlocked. So, by extension, the Palace will be locked. So, if you play Change Form once, you are going to need to play Change Form again unless your opponent plays Grimsby and places it back for you. But it can be good if you need those fates. But it does cost 1 power and 1 play a card action, so be aware of that. Opportunist, as we were talking about before, is good to get items and effects out of your discard pile. So you can get your crown, your trident, or one of your hero mover effects, or a chain form if you absolutely need it. Crow Giant is also a popular choice. And a binding contract, but you only really need the green one, and you will never have that in the discard pile, even with a divination, which discards your deck until you find a binding contract. And you have 2 copies of this. Uh, this can be a good way to mill through your deck, especially if a good amount of binding contracts have gone by. But make sure you know there is only 1 copy of the green one, 1 copy of the red one, and then 2 copies of the blue and yellow one. You do not want to mill through the crown, the trident, and all of your opportunist before you find another contract. Uh, there is only one way for Ursula's deck to be reshuffled, and that is Flounder, which your opponent will be playing, presumably when you have a large discard pile, to keep you from finding the crown, the trident, and the green binding contract. So I keep saying green binding contract a lot. And this is going to be touching more on how she is going to win. Ursula is always going to have 1 turn of vulnerability. No matter how you play this, there's going to be 1 turn where your opponent can fate, and if they get the right card, then it'll set you back a whole lot. That right card being Sebastian or Ariel, depending on what part of this you're going for. Essentially, what you're going to need is you're going to need the Trident on King Triton, and either the Crown Plate or the Binding Contract. And you are also going to need an eel of your choice. It doesn't matter which one. They both have the same ability at Eric's ship. And so, what you'll need to do is go to the layer, activate Jetsam to defeat King Triton, which places the Trident right into your hands at the layer. Now, there are variations of this combo, but all of them will require an eel at Eric's ship. If you have King Triton with his trident, and Sebastian is on the board. You can play this whenever since there is no risk of him losing the contract and you don't want a star flat to hit him. So, what this means is that when you go to the layer, you can activate whatever eel you have, in this case Jetsam, move him, and move the trident down, and then play your crown. And this way, it is now only this turn Ariel can come out and bring an item over here. But if she's in the discard pile, return to form only brings back heroes to Ursula's location. And if she is forced at your location, she cannot move your items away. So that would be another version of that combo. Another version is if the crown is out and the trident is out and Ariel is out, but not Sebastian. Then you play the contract, activate, move him, defeat him, and now this is in your discard pile and this is in your layer. So those are some of the variations you can do to only have one turn of vulnerability of Ariel or Sebastian. Now you might be asking, why the green binding contract? Well, the blue binding contract would also work if you had an eel placed there previously, King Triton. Let's say you had the blue one for Eric's ship. You activate King Jetsam to move King Triton. He's defeated, and then the Trident falls down there. And then you can use this move action to move it over here. The reason this one is not as reliable is because, as I said before, you need to choose a place to hero stack, and I like to hero stack at Eric's ship. And if Ariel is out, then you cannot use that move action, so the Trident would be stranded at that location. And a really funny play, I'm not going to say this is a good play, but a funny play, if this is the case, yes, you can try to put a green binding contract, but if your opponent plays Eric, they can move a King Trident into another place to defeat him and bring his Trident with him. And now you have to defeat Ariel, and you've just lost 2 binding contracts. So those are the main combos you want to look out for. The last thing I would like to touch on is that there is no way for Ariel to remove items from a locked location. So, if you have King Trident with his Trident, and you have the crown in play, but you're also going to need the green binding contract. On this turn, you can play the crown. Oh, the crown has to be in play, I'm sorry. Then you play Whirlpool, move him away, bring the Trident down there, contract goes away, he goes away, and then you can play Change Form to lock your items. However, that does require previous turns of vulnerability to Ariel, since you need to both have one item in there already. It doesn't matter which one it is. So it's not as reliable, but if you think you can go for it, it might be worth a shot. I do want to talk about Grow Giant and Trickery for a bit, because that's another way she can win. She can Fate Spam the opponent a lot, and with Grow Giant, she can use both of her play card actions at the shore to Fate twice. She is one of the very few characters in the game that can hit your opponent with 2 Fate actions. And this can be rough for your opponent, but remember, your objective is to win the game, not stop your opponent from winning the game. And Trickery, it's not really worth holding on to. Your opponent probably won't get above 6 power unless they're Prince John. So, don't worry too much about that. Alright. Touched on this Fate deck a little bit earlier, but as I said, these are all reactive. You do not really need to worry about any of these. Gramsci can be annoying since he can lock himself over your activate, but that's really it. They're just minor annoyances like making you go to a location you didn't want to go next turn. Don't really worry about any of them. Dinglehopper's same thing, annoying, but she does need a lot of power, which is why I actually like to use Grow Giant to gain 3 power here instead of the fading strategy. And Snarkblats, you really want to hold the Trident for as long as you can, specifically so that Trident Snarkblats don't come on to King Trident, because that is an extra 3 power, an extra turn that you have to go there. And really, that's a turn there, a turn off, and then a turn back to get that play action. Since the Ursula's Lair isn't good if it's covered, and you don't really want to be going there until you're ready to win the game. Which brings us to Ursula's Lair. As I said before, this is where you want to go when you are ready to win the game. You do not want Ariel or Sebastian ruining your plans. And it's really only used, it's for that activate action. Maybe that gain 1 power if you really need it, but you really should be playing your crown to the layer and uh, using the green binding contract for the trident. Airchip, great place to fate, but that's about the entire use. And discard, gotta discard to find these 3 cards. And the shore is where you're going to be gaining most of your power. Decent for a surprise fate as well, since your opponent might think that you're fate locked, but if you have a Grow Giant, you're really not. And the shore, if that is unlocked, Ursula's Lair will be locked. You do have a move item or ally action here, but you cannot move an item into the layer if it's locked. You have a Fate, which, once again, she's really good for fating in those necessary matchups. Gain 2 power. She does need power, so that's pretty good. And move a hero is one of the best ways to move a hero, especially because it completely ignores King Triton's ability. But even if you do defeat King Triton there, the same problem persists. You gotta have a turn of bringing it back and having Ariel show up is a major problem, especially if you have an unattached item and Ariel at the same place. This is the biggest no-no as Ursula. This is because you will need to find some way to defeat Ariel. Uh, and then you will have to have some way of moving the Trident out and relocking this before Ariel shows back up there. So it can be a massive hindrance. Many plays, many moves. And the worst part about the short is that there's no play a card action. One of the, I want to say, 2 locations in Disney Villainous that does not have a play a card action at it. So that's really the main reason I like to keep it locked. I like the play action a little bit more. But that's pretty much it for new Ursula. It really is as simple as keep all your heroes in one place. Uh, if you can do that, you're on your way to really not really dealing with your heroes, but on your way of chasing your objective. Oh, one last thing. If Ariel comes out early, you can play the crown for free since she is no longer a threat. So yes, just be aware of what is in your Fate deck. Remember that returned form, though there are 3 copies. It can only go to your location, so if Ariel's in the discard, it's fine if you're here because she cannot move those. And I wish everyone here the best of luck in their Ursula games. See y'all next week, everyone.